The sun was setting behind the purple hills of Zalara. Karina walked slowly, her eyes wide with fear and wonder. She wasn't supposed to be here. The red thorn forest was a cursed place. That's what the elders always said. Go near the red thorn, and you'll never return, they warned. But something strange had drawn her in today. Smoke rising in the distance. Not black like a forest fire, but soft, white, and steady, like a cooking fire. Her heart beat faster with every step. She moved through thick blue vines and glowing mushrooms. The air smelled different, here like hot stone and burnt meat. She crouched low, staying quiet, and then she saw him, a human. He was sitting on a rock near a small fire. His skin looked pale in the golden light. He had no armor, no weapons in sight, just a long metal stick leaning against a tree. But what truly made Karina freeze was what he was eating. There was a huge beast on the ground beside him. Half its body was charred, sliced open, red spikes on its back, huge claws, thick skin like stone. A Varker, the apex predator of her planet. The nightmare of every child, the one creature even the warriors feared, dead. The human was cutting its flesh and putting the meat on a stick, roasting it casually like it was a normal hunt. He looked relaxed. He was even humming. Karina stayed behind the bush, too afraid to move. How could this be? Varkers could tear ships apart. They could crush bone with a single bite, and this stranger had killed one? She had to see more. She crept a little closer, careful not to make a sound. Suddenly the human stopped. He turned his head slowly and looked straight at her hiding spot. You watching or joining? He said. His voice was calm, almost amused. Karina froze. Did he really see her, or was he guessing? She didn't answer. He stood up slowly and picked something from the ground. A chunk of roasted meat. He tossed it gently toward the bush. Where she hid, it landed near her feet, still warm, not poisoned. He said, I don't eat alone. Karina stared at the meat. It smelled good. Her instincts screamed to run, but her curiosity was louder. She stood up slowly, hands open to show she meant no harm. The human didn't move. He just smiled a little. Didn't expect company, he said. But I'll take it, Karina. Stepped into the light. Her skin glowed slightly under the setting sun. Her long ears twitched. Her tail curled behind her legs. She looked at the Varker's dead body again, up close. It was clear the kill was real. This human had done the impossible. You killed that, she asked, voice shaking. Yeah, he said. Tried to kill me first. Karina couldn't. Look away. What are you? She whispered. The human laughed, hungry, he said, and sat back down. She stayed standing, unsure what to do. He looked up at her again. You've never eaten Varker? He asked. She shook her head quickly. No one has? It's sacred, dangerous, forbidden. Not anymore, he said. Want a bite or not? Her stomach growled before she could answer. She hadn't eaten since morning. The journey had taken hours slowly. She sat across from him. The fire warmed her face. The meat smelled even better now. She picked up the piece he had tossed, hesitated, then took a bite. It was smoky, tender, and full of flavor she had never tasted before. Her eyes widened. It's good, she said, surprised. Told you, the human replied, smiling. Name's Jack, he added. You? Karina, she said. Nice to meet you, Karina, he said. Welcome to dinner. She couldn't believe what was happening. She was sitting with a stranger from another world, eating the flesh of the most feared creature on her planet. She wasn't scared anymore. She was curious. Who was this man really? How did he survive here alone? And if he could kill a Varker, what else was he capable of? The wind blew gently through the forest. The flames danced somewhere in the trees. Another Varker howled in the distance. Karina didn't flinch. She looked at Jack, and for the first time in her life, she felt safer near a predator than far from one. Karina couldn't sleep that night. She had returned to the edge of the village, but her mind was still in the forest, still sitting across the fire from the strange human named Jack, still tasting the meat of a creature no one had ever dared to kill. She stared at the stars from her hut's window. The moonlight touched her face, but her thoughts burned. Was he real? Or had her hunger made her dream the whole thing? No, she had the small scar on her finger cut from the sharp Varker bone he had tossed her, but it was real. The next morning she went back, even though her legs trembled. Even though the elders warned her not to leave again, she had to see him. Once more, she had to know the truth. The forest felt different now, less like a cursed place, more like a doorway. When she reached the same spot, she saw him again. He was sharpening a knife made from Varker claw. The creature's skull was now mounted on a wooden post behind him, like a trophy or maybe a warning. He looked up and smiled, back for seconds. He asked. She nodded slowly, then asked, "Why are your eyes like fire?" He tilted his head, confused. "My eyes? They burn like the stars," she said softly. "When you looked at me last night, I saw heat, power, and sadness." Jack chuckled, but then his face changed. He stood slowly and looked toward the trees, then whispered, "Because fire remembers." Karina didn't understand. He pointed at the scar on his arm. "A Varker did this the day I crashed here." He said, "I lost my friends, my ship, everything." He paused, voice lower, "And I swore I wouldn't die like prey." She watched him closely. He wasn't just a human. He was something forged by pain and fire. He didn't fear the forest. He had become a part of it. She stepped closer to the fire. "You killed the beast, but what do you want now?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I want to live, not survive." He added, "Live." She sat beside him, more curious now than afraid. "Teach me," she whispered. Jack raised an eyebrow. "Teach you what?" "How to hunt what hunts us," she said. He looked at her seriously for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right," he said, "but I warn you, Karina, once you see the fire, you don't go back to the cold." He handed her the knife. Her fingers closed around the Varker claw handle. It felt heavy and sharp, but also warm, like it remembered the one who forged it. Her heartbeat quickened. For the first time, she felt like more than prey. She felt dangerous. The wind rustled the trees. Birds flew off in panic. Jack stood quickly. "Get ready," he said. Karina looked up, confused. Then she heard it. A low growl, not one, but two, maybe three, more Varkers. The scent of blood must have drawn them in. Jack's face hardened. He grabbed his spear. "Lesson 1, he said. "Never run from something that wants to eat you." She held the knife tight. Her hands shook. But she didn't step back. The shadows between the trees moved. Eyes glowed. Red in the dark, the hunt had come again. But this time she wasn't alone. This time, she stood beside the fire-eyed human, and she was ready to burn. The first Varker lunged from the shadows. Its roar shattered the stillness of the forest. Karina froze, its jaws wide, its teeth like spears, but Jack didn't move back. He stepped forward. In one swift motion, he shoved his burning spear into the creature's open mouth. The flame met flesh. The beast screamed, staggered, and fell to the ground. Its body rolled and twitched, smoke rising from its throat. Karina couldn't breathe. She had seen warriors run from a Varker, but this man, this human, had killed. To now, with no armor, no backup, and no fear, another beast charged from the left. Jack didn't face it. He called out, "Now, Karina." She remembered what he taught her just hours ago. Use the tree as your shield. Fight for the right angle. Go for the eye. She waited, then leaped. The knife found its mark. The creature howled, staggered. Jack spun and threw a jagged stone. It cracked against the beast's skull. The second Varker fell. Twitching in the dirt, silence returned. Only their heavy breathing filled the air. Karina stared at the bloody blade in her hand. I killed it," she whispered. Jack walked over and nodded. "Yes, you did." She looked at the monster's massive head. The legends had always described Varkers as gods, untouchable, eternal. But here lay two dead. Jack picked up the skull. Of the first beast, it was heavy, with massive horns and hollow eyes. He cleaned the blood with dry leaves, then placed it near the other one, 2 trophies in a row. Karina stepped back and watched. To him, this wasn't horror, it was routine. Like planting flags after a battle, She asked softly, "Why do you keep the heads?" Jack didn't. "Look at her." He set the skull just right so it stared at the trees. "To remind them," he said. "Remind who?" "The rest of the forest," he replied. "That we're not food anymore." Karina felt a chill. There was a wildness in his voice, not evil, but ancient, like something old had awakened inside him. He had come to this world alone, hunted, wounded, forgotten, and now he was changing it, later, as the sun rose. Jack and Karina sat beside the fire again, blood on their hands, dirt on their faces, but they were alive. Jack handed her a strip of Varker meat. She took it without hesitation this time. It no longer tasted like fear, it tasted like victory. She asked, "How many have you killed?" He stared into the fire, enough to sleep without flinching. He answered, "Do you ever feel bad?" He turned to her, for surviving. She looked away. Unsure, he added, "The Varker would never hesitate. Why should I?" She nodded slowly. Something inside her had changed too. She was no longer the same curious girl who had peeked through the leaves. She was a hunter now, and beside her sat the only human on Zalara, the one who dared feast on death itself. As the fire crackled, Karina noticed something strange. The nearby creatures, small ones, usually scared, were no longer running. They were watching from a distance, as if they knew. Something new ruled the forest now, not the beasts, not the fear, but the fire-eyed human and the girl who followed him. Asterisk, the fire burned low. Glowing like the last heartbeat of the forest, Karina sat cross-legged, her face stained with ash and dried blood, across from her. Jack poked the embers with a stick made from Varker bone. Neither of them spoke for a while. The silence was heavy, not uncomfortable. It was full of questions, full of weight, full of change. Karina finally broke the quiet. "You're not like the humans we heard about in old stories?" Jack looked up slowly. "No. They said humans were loud, soft, always afraid of new worlds." He smirked. "I was afraid once," he said, tossing a broken twig into the flames. "When I first woke up on this planet, I cried like a child." She blinked, surprised. "You cried?" "Yeah," he said. "I lost my crew. My ship crashed. Food gone, weapons melted." He looked into the fire like it held the past. "I buried 6 friends with my bare hands." Karina lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be," he said. "They would have laughed at me for surviving this long." He chuckled dryly. "I was the weakest on the team." She frowned. "But you killed the strongest creature on my planet." Jack shrugged. "I didn't." "Get strong," he said. "I got tired of dying." Karina looked at him closely now. He had cuts on his hands, new and old. His skin told stories no words could explain. She asked, "What drives you now?" Jack didn't answer at first. He stared at the sky, the stars blinking above. Then he whispered, "Silence." She tilted her head. "Silence." He nodded slowly. "I spent so long hearing the screams of my friends. The beasts, my own voice in the dark." He took a deep breath. "Now I want peace." Karina felt something shift in her chest. She had always seen humans as visitors, outsiders, maybe even invaders, but this one, he bled like her, he mourned like her, and yet he still stood tall. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a tiny vial of blue dust. It shimmered softly in the firelight. "This is my tribe's memory dust," she said. "It's made from flowers that only grow where warriors fall." Jack watched her, curious but silent. She opened the vial and let the dust fall into the fire. The flames turned a soft blue above them. Glowing shapes flickered into the smoke, figures dancing, shadows of lost warriors. "My brother died." "Near here," she whispered, trying to save a child from a Varker. Jack bowed his head. "I'm sorry." Karina nodded. He was brave. She looked into Jack's eyes. "But you're something else." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I'm not a hero, Karina. I'm just a man who learned to stop running." The fire crackled, blue turning slowly back to orange. A warm wind blew through the trees. She looked at him with something new, respect. "Maybe trust?" she asked softly. "Would you teach others what you taught me?" He raised an eyebrow. "You want me to train your people?" She nodded. They still fear the forest. But maybe it's time we stop fearing and start fighting. Jack leaned back, looked up at the night sky again. After a long pause, he said, "I'm not staying here forever, Karina," she replied. "I know, but while you are, we need you." He smiled, not proud, not cocky, just quiet, like someone who finally found purpose in a world that tried to break him. Then he said the words that would change her village's fate. "All right," he said. "Let's teach them to become fire." And beneath the stars, 2 hunters sat beside the bones of their fears, planning to light a flame that would never die. Karina walked ahead of Jack. Her boots sank into the soft red soil as the village came into view. The sun hung low behind them, casting their shadows long and sharp. But it wasn't the sunset that turned heads. It was what followed them, slung. Over Jack's back was the full skull of a Verker, its massive horns curved like blades, its teeth still dripping with dried blood. Tied beside it were 2 severed claws, larger than any child in the village, and on his belt, the jagged tooth of the 3rd beast gleamed in the sun. Gasps spread like fire as villagers peeked from behind woven doors and cloth curtains. Mothers pulled children close. Elders narrowed their eyes and made old signs of protection in the air. "Karina," someone cried. An elder woman rushed toward her. "You've brought him back?" shouted. "You let him here?" Karina raised her hands, calm but firm. "He is not the danger you fear," she said. The crowd grew louder. Someone pointed at Jack. "He carries the head of a god. He defiles sacred flesh. He brings the forest curse into our homes." Jack didn't flinch. He placed the Varker skull gently on the ground, then stood tall and silent. His eyes scanned the faces: fear, anger, confusion, but no understanding. One of the elders stepped forward. His voice was sharp like cracked stone. "We warned you, Karina. No human should ever step here again. You saw what they did to our world in the past." Jack finally spoke. "I didn't come to conquer," he said. "I came to survive, and now I offer to teach." The elder scoffed. "Teach us what?" "How to eat our gods." Jack didn't smile this time. "Your gods tried to rip your children apart," he said. He kicked aside the bone of the 3rd Varker. This one nearly took Karina's life, but she killed it with her own hand. Gasps turned to silence. All eyes shifted to Karina. She nodded. "I did," she said. With his help, the elder's voice dropped. "And now you wish to make him our protector?" Karina stepped closer. "No," she said. "I want him to make us protectors." A murmur moved through the crowd. Some shook their heads. Others whispered. But a few young warriors stepped forward, eyes wide with something new. Hope won. Of them, a boy not much older than Karina asked quietly, "You really killed them?" 3 Varkers. Jack nodded once. The boy dropped to one knee. "Teach me," he said. Another followed, then a 3rd. Soon a small circle of young aliens knelt before the skull. Their eyes locked on the fire-eyed human, but the elders stood still. The oldest among them said, "If this goes wrong, the curse will fall on us all." Karina didn't blink. "Then let it fall on me first," she said. The crowd fell silent again. Jack picked up the Varker tooth and handed it to the boy who had spoken. "First lesson," he said. "Fear is loud, real strength is quiet." And with that, the first warrior of the new age held death's tooth in his hand and didn't tremble. That night, fires were lit not for warning, but for learning. Karina stood beside Jack at the edge of the training circle as children of fear began learning the way of the predator. And the village, once frozen in silence, began to breathe again. Not everyone believed. But belief had already begun. Asterisk night fell faster than usual. The sky over the village turned black without warning. Even the stars seemed to hide. Karina stood near the edge of the new training circle. Something in her chest felt tight, like the air was holding its breath. Jack noticed it too. He paced around the fire, eyes scanning the treetops. The animals had gone silent. Not a bird, not a chirp, not even the wind moved. It was the kind of silence that always came before something terrible tonight. Jack whispered, "They'll come." Karina looked at him, unsure. "Are you certain?" He didn't answer. He just tightened the strap on his shoulder blade. and loaded his weapon. His face was calm, but his body was ready, like a volcano that knew the shaking had begun. The village was asleep, mostly, but a few of the younger ones were still training. They practiced stances Jack had taught them, silent footwork, quick strikes, then a scream, high-pitched, sharp and short, then silence again. Jack turned toward the forest. "They're testing us," he said. Not hunting, yet just circling, Karina drew her blade. It was still marked with the dried blood of her first kill. Tonight it would drink again. Then they came. The first Varker burst through the trees like a boulder with claws. Its roar shook the huts, rattled the sky. Villagers screamed. Running in all directions, another followed, then two more glowing red eyes, teeth that shined under the moonlight. The nightmares had returned, and this time they came together. Jack didn't run. He stood at the center of the training ground and lit his torch. The flames roared tall, casting wild shadows across the clearing. He shouted, "This is your line. Hold it." The young trainees stood behind him, some shaking, some weeping, but not moving back. Karina stood to his left, spear in hand, her body steady. "We are not prey," she whispered. "We are not prey." The others repeated, "The first beast." Charged, Jack stepped aside with perfect timing and drove a sharpened stake into its side. It screamed but kept running. Karina leapt and slashed its neck. Blood sprayed, hot and dark. One down, the beast stumbled and fell. One down, the second came from the right. This one was bigger, faster. It tore through a hut like paper. A child cried out beneath the rubble. Karina didn't think, she just moved. She dove, grabbed the child, and rolled away as the beast struck the ground. Jack followed with fire. He threw his torch at its face. The creature howled, blinded. Then a dozen small spears thrown by young villagers rained down on it. The beast twitched, roared, then dropped, two down. But the biggest one hadn't moved yet. It stood at the forest's edge, watching, waiting. Jack stared into its eyes. He recognized this one. "The Alpha," he whispered. "It's not here to eat, it's here to punish." The Alpha stepped forward, slow and silent. Each footstep cracked roots beneath its weight. The villagers backed away. Even the flames seemed to shrink. Karina gripped her weapon tighter, but Jack didn't let her move. "This one's mine," he said. Picked up the Varker claw blade, the one he'd made from the first kill. He walked alone into the center of the clearing. The Alpha snarled, lowered its head, then charged. Jack didn't flinch. He waited until the last second, then he jumped not backward, but forward, straight into the beast's path with all his strength. He drove the blade into the side of its neck. The beast slammed into him, throwing both into a pile of broken wood. Smoke filled the air. For a moment, no one breathed. Then the Alpha staggered. It took 2 steps, 3, and collapsed. Jack rose slowly, bleeding but standing. He looked at the villagers, eyes blazing in the firelight. "Now you know," he said. "They can be killed." The village stood in silence. Then the young ones cheered. Even the elders stepped forward, heads bowed. They had seen gods bleed, and it was a human who showed them how. The smoke of battle still hung in the air by morning, but the village stood. For the first time in 100 seasons, it had not fallen to the forest. The Varkers were dead, and their bodies lay still in the light of dawn. Children stepped from their huts, eyes wide. They saw the broken horns, the massive paws, the giant teeth scattered like bones of forgotten gods. And they saw something else, a man, standing tall despite the blood on his chest. Jack, he stood at the center of the village, sharpening the edge of his blade. As if this was just another morning, Karina walked to him. Her steps slow, her body sore, but her spirit stronger than ever before. "You should rest," she said. Jack shook his head. "There's still work to do." He looked around at the village now, full of people whispering, pointing, watching, not with fear this time. With awe, with respect, the elders approached, their expressions unreadable. One of them, the same who once warned Karina to never bring Jack home, now held out his hand. "We judged you too soon," he said quietly. Jack took the hand, firm but humble. "I didn't come to be a legend," Jack said, "but it looks like one." "Followed me anyway," Karina smiled. You changed everything, she said. Not alone, Jack replied. Looking at her, you stood beside me when no one else did. Word of the battle spread fast. Other villages sent messengers. Some came to see the skulls, others to train, and a few simply to watch the human who killed gods. Jack began teaching the younger ones how to track without being seen, how to fight without rage, how to face fear with open eyes. Garina became his second, her name spoken in the same breath as his, not as student but as warrior. The village changed slowly. The old laws remained, but the fear behind them began to fade where there were once walls. There were now paths into the woods. Where there was silence, there was laughter. And above the training field stood 3 skulls, Varker, Alpha, and the beast from Karina's first hunt. Mounted not as trophies, but reminders of what was lost and what was reclaimed one night as the stars blinked awake. Karina and Jack sat by the fire once more. She looked at him and asked, "What will happen when your people find you?" Jack poked the fire. "If they do, I'll have a choice," he said. "Leave or stay, and what will you choose?" He smiled, eyes glowing like coals. "I've never belonged anywhere before," he said, "but here I feel like I do." Karina reached into her pouch, pulled out a piece of clothaband from her tribe. She tied it around his wrist. "You are one of us now," she whispered. From that day, the stories changed. No longer just tales of fear and monsters. Now they told of a human with fire in his eyes and a girl who walked beside him, unafraid. The old legends faded. New ones were born, and at the center of them all stood the man who ate the planet's apex predator and taught others to become something more than prey. He didn't rewrite their history. He helped them start a new chapter, one not ruled by fear, but by fire.